What is good, y'all? This is Robert. It's your boy. Today we are here on a nice Monday afternoon now. And yeah, hope everybody's doing well and hope your 2023 is going pretty good so far. I know that with every beginning, there's always ups and downs, but yeah, I sincerely hope everybody's staying safe out there and yeah and continue to kick butt. That's just pretty much all I got. So, and speaking of which, we have somebody who I consider to be a rock star in a literal sense, and I do mean it in like every single way because they've done work as metal singer, they've done voiceover, they've pretty much been doing like a bunch of stuff over the years. And you might recognize them for Aggretsuko, Fire Emblem, and a bunch of other stuff that they've been in. So here we have Mr. Jamison. I am terrible with pronouncing names. We have James or Jamison. That's just pretty much all. I'm not gonna even try to pronounce the last name because that's been kind of like a running theme here. So
That's been a
forgive.
running theme of my whole life.
Yeah. So
um,
just bear with me. But yeah, thanks for
yeah,
joining me on this lovely afternoon.
yeah, no problem. It's funny because my dad decided only a couple of years ago at like a Christmas that we were at that, oh, we're going to start pronouncing the family name differently now. And I'm like, Dad, I'm 39 years old. I'm not pronouncing my name any differently. So
Oh
there's
yeah.
two of them out there. There's Boaz, which is the one I usually go for, and according to my family, Bose is also on the table. So yeah, I'll take either one.
Oh, I suppose. Okay, so either or. Yeah. Just give a quick little rundown. What have you been up to, and just your work and all that jazz, and your little introduction, if you may.
Um, well, I've got something really, really cool that I'm working on right now, but I can't say what it is. But when it comes out, it's going to be really, really fun. I'm absolutely loving, it's one of those kind of jobs that, I wake up every day and I'm excited to get to work in the studio. I can't say it's music related. Um, but recently we just had one of my music projects called Resodrone, which was formed to make music for the game Cyberpunk 2077. We finally released a new single on the 20th, and people were really having a good time with that. And ironically, I wasn't thinking about it when I set the release date, but it was the same day that Fire Emblem Engage came out. So, people are playing Fire Emblem Engage and uh, getting to meet Gris right now, and that has just been so much fun. I've had a long history with Nintendo and Fire Emblem. Uh, Sang two of the songs for the soundtrack. This is my third character that I voiced in across the different Fire Emblem series. I've done work with Arc System Works. I've worked on Guilty Gear, Blaze Blue, lots of stuff with Capcom, like Devil May Cry 5 and Resident Evil Village. Um, Mostly voice work for those guys. And yeah, I stuff comes my way and I'm like, yes, the answer is always yes, let's do it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah. I don't have much to say, but it's just pretty dope, man. Yeah. Yeah. So now that you've got all of that out of the way, how did you get started? Just out of curiosity.
Mm, um in well, each part kind of has its own thing. They're all really, believe it or not, like it's like I have to do these things, but they're all like very like separate entities. So I guess the thing that started the whole thing was yeah, I was always playing in bands. Since I was like 13 years old, I was in a band in a trailer park in North Carolina, just trying to make death metal, and it was very, very bad. But it's something I was passionate about, stuck with it, and um, you know, stuff. I just kept playing in bands, so I was always on stage. I always thought of stage as theater, so we wore costumes and did a lot of makeup and stuff. Um, and just talking to the crowd, bantering with the crowd and stuff. So um, a lot of experiences in recording studios, um, as a lead singer for most of the bands that I was in. So I have a love for just being in a booth, um, with a microphone in front of me. I'm very comfortable in that situation. So, fast forward later on, I'm in Los Angeles. I'm working for, motion capture companies and voiceover ADR as an engineer. So I've recorded a lot more stuff than I've actually been in. I've worked on a lot more titles um, than some of my more recent credits. As an engineer and as like a dialogue editor, which is where I kind of like met everybody here. But I was kind of in the room when someone needed like an extra soldier voice. I think it was like Resident Evil 6 was one of my first games that I worked on. And they were like, well, Jamison likes to yell and stuff. Let's get him in the room and just have him over here, over there, grenade, that kind of stuff. And I wasn't very good at it, but oh, cat, hello. Yes. But I fell in love with it. It was kind of an extension of singing to me. Like voice acting was what it kind of scratched the same itch that I loved about going in and recording, music as a singer. So I just kind of pursued it lightly. And then just in the past few years, I was like, I really want to do this. I want to do more of this kind of stuff. And I kind of let everybody know that that's what I was doing. And, luckily I've got, good friends who give me opportunities and help me out to see if I could, if I could swim, if they threw me in the deep end of the pool. And so far, so good. Here we are. I haven't drowned yet.
No. Yeah, it's just, it's kind of like one thing just kind of leads to another, and then it just leads to another. So it really do be like that.
It really is. It's, sometimes people ask me like, hey, I know someone who's trying to get into this part of the business or this side of the business. What advice would you give them? And I can only really give advice from my own perspective because like, when I moved to Los Angeles, I didn't come here to be a voice actor. It's not what I came to do. Um,
Sure.
and I think that people who follow a path of acting in theater have a completely different set of skills, that they spent most of their life honing. And I really spent most of my life as a musician and a performer. So it's kind of like hurry up and catch up for me. So I don't want to give anybody bad advice, but sometimes people ask me that question and I'm like, my story is a little weird, so I don't want to lead anybody down the wrong path, but like I want to give somebody, like if they ask me that question, I want to give you something good to walk away with. I guess never just say yes to everything. Just go for it. Go for it. Forget fear. Just somebody says, here, be a soldier, go be a soldier. Be the best soldier number 12 you've ever soldiered.
Okay, I'll just be soldier number 12. Okay, here's a couple of mine. There you go.
Yell, believe it.
Paycheck. Yes. Yeah. So going back to like earlier when you were talking about, how you got started, was your family always like 100% on board with like you being, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a rock star, or like I'm gonna do metal and do all this crazy stuff?
Yeah.
Did they approve of that?
Yeah. Yeah. My family was like super supportive of everything that I was doing. When I was in school, the first thing that I started to kind of show aptitude for was art, and I was really interested in painting. And I had like a little hometown, little tiny little town in North Carolina, and I had like some of my little kid art put up in like galleries, and I started like, oh, I like watching people enjoy things that I make. And I think my family knew that maybe there was something good in that. I think maybe not a lot of parents would want their kid to go off and be a death metal singer of a band and play bars and clubs and stuff, but it made a lot of people happy, and it was it was always a good thing. It was a very positive kind of place. It was kind of a safe place for a lot of people in that town too at the time. for like people who were, goth or, dressed alternative and that kind of stuff. It was a sketchy place to be into that stuff, and we kind of provided like a place where people could come out and be comfortable. So I think it was always the sense that it was like, well, if we let this guy go be creative, he makes things that, generally, good for people. So they really supported me through the processes of, they got me my first guitar, they got me my first synthesizer, and that really kind of became like everything musically for me, was like a guitar and a synthesizer. And that's pretty much been like the whole music career the whole time.
Oh yeah. Did you have like any influences growing up?
um well, musically, um I listened to, like, it was nothing but the radio when I was a kid. So, I would go around just listening to the radio, whatever was on, like country music, whatever was on the rock station. But my parents were big music fans. My my parents were both Beatles fans, but then my mom kind of went a little more like Creedence Clearwater Revival, Steppenwolf, and Black Sabbath. And then like my dad was a little more like Elton John and Queen and stuff. And like that kind of like dichotomy of like that kind of grandiosity of Queen. I love Freddie Mercury. And then on the other hand, you have like the evil stuff. So I think that was like a dichotomy that I loved so much. And then of course the Beatles, just incredible songwriters. But my first influence musically was Metallica. I think that was, to me, that was the band that when I heard that, I was like, I'm gonna sit in my bedroom for hours and just learn Metallica riffs.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Um, I think I'm kind of noticing that we seem to have like very like similar tastes when it comes to like classic rock and whatnot. I always just really love like the 60s, 70s, like the stuff that my parents in their generation grew up with. I think that's kind of like I'm just always like a classic type of person.
Yeah.
And that goes for like a lot of media, like, video games, TV, movies, and all that cool jazz. No pun intended. And that's just, the type of person that I am. So it's just really nice to, geek out about like, bands and, musicians, artists, and, you know, what made them stand out from the crowd. Anything, everything and anything. And it's nice to have like, different tastes and different, unique styles and blend it into your own. As an artist and as an actor, I just think that it's really important. Yeah, at least for me. I know that everyone's different, but that's just usually how I feel.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of the time. Yeah.
I think really like sometimes I wonder, music is only different arrangements of the same 12 notes, and there's, everything is just an amalgamation of rearranging those 12 notes. It's like a puzzle that has a finite number of pieces, but the combinations are so limitless that you'll never solve it. And when it comes to, things like guitars and pianos and stuff, I sometimes feel like music, like I feel like the best things have all already been done. But now it's the real creativity comes when you decide to like pull from influences that don't seem like they would work well together, and then find a way to make it work. And I think that combinations of like something classic and then something modern, or something from one genre and then another genre, and then you mash that together, and I think that's when you get something that maybe evokes a new feeling, because let's face it, Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi wrote all the best guitar riffs already. We're just borrowing from him at this point.
Oh, yeah. So I was wondering, so I'm not sure if I know this or not, but what were some of the very first like Because I know that you mentioned how you got started, but what were some of like, I think what I would ask is, what were some of your first jobs, like working in the industry, and what led you to, um, I mean, I know you've done a lot of work since then, but how would you describe your first experiences and your first jobs of actually working, like, in VO or just in the industry in general, music and yeah, etc. Sorry if this is not like the most well, I guess, worded question. So just,
Oh, you're good. You're good,
forgive
man.
me.
Yeah, let's this is rock and roll, dude. I love this.
Yeah, rock and roll.
Uh, yeah, dude. Just roll with it.
Yeah.
Uh, you know it's weird again. It's the weird story of how I got. Um, I was meant to come to LA from little Wahlberg, North Carolina, to be like a studio guy to work in recording studios, and I got my first job um as an intern. Well, as an internship. And I was so freaked out because I'm not used to LA and traffic and the way, how fast paced it all is out here. I'm used to like, like country roads. It's always really quiet, and I'm having to go get things for people and like big clients and stuff like as a runner. And I ended up like getting the wrong thing a couple of times, and then they were like, "No, you're fired." I'm like, "Crap." But that wasn't the studio that I really wanted to work for. So I figured, well, I got fired from that one. Maybe I'll just go for the jugular and try to get a job at the studio I really want to work for. I think I didn't go for that one because I thought I would mess it up. But, as they say, fail forward. So I got my job at that studio. I worked there for about 3 years. I went from an unpaid intern. And then when we decided to call it quits, I was manager of the studio. And it wasn't what I liked to do. It was office work. It was a lot of time on phones and emails and accounts and all this stuff, but I learned a lot. Um, and it was a commercial studio, a lot of like Marilyn Manson, 30 Seconds to Mars, Kid Rock, Breaking Benjamin, like huge bands, had their albums done there. I got to meet a lot of my heroes and get them burritos, which is not what I was expecting if I ever met them, but hey, whatever, you take what you get. And I ended up leaving that place on good terms to go find something else. And I started kind of helping my friend out at his studio in North Hollywood. And at the time, they were recording voiceover, which I'd never even really seen or thought of working in before. And I'm just at the studio helping out. It's a music studio, but they also do VO. And I was like, this is pretty cool, and I was just there to help them out. But they needed like an editor. And I knew how to use Pro Tools. So they were like, well, you can do this. So they sent me some work. I took it home. They liked my work. Uh, and I started kind of just like, the money was better, that kind of crap. And I started meeting voice actors through this. Like every day, two or three different voice actors would come in and everyone was excited to tell me who they were and who they voiced and what. And then I'm like, are you kidding me? You were in Ghost in the Shell. Like I was watching that growing up in, little podunk town when I was like 12 years old. I was watching like Ghost in the Shell and Ninja Scroll and Dragon Ball and the Guyver and Berserk and all this stuff. I didn't think I was ever going to meet the people who made the stuff. And I think it was particularly when I met Ruben Langdon for the first time on Sengoku Basara 3. And they knew the people at studio. I was a huge Devil May Cry fan, and I played number 3 when I was in college, and that was the first time I played a game and realized, wait a minute, these characters, the motions, like the performance of the body, like that's a person doing that in a suit first. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I thought that was all animated and stuff. Part of it is, but like, I started to want to know who these people were, and then now I'm meeting them, and it got me really interested in the voiceover side of things, and that's kind of what started it. Um, and then through the years, I just kept getting work from different people in different places and getting different opportunities, and I just showed up and tried to do my best for every one of them, and it's worked out so far.
Yeah. So, how would you say that being an engineer, at least in your experience, also really helped, like, form or like develop your skills as a voiceover artist and even a musician?
Yeah. Well, I think with music, like I feel like being an engineer in a music studio, you're kind of a dream catcher. You're kind of just ready to grab an artist's moment of greatness, that they've generated, they've created elsewhere. Um, it's pretty fun, but I enjoy like actually making the music myself rather than recording other bands and stuff like that. I've never really done a lot of other bands. Um, but being an engineer for voiceover, I feel like what your main job is to remove uh the technical stuff, to remove technology from in between the director and the client and the talent in the booth. So you're hitting all the right buttons at the right time so that they can start to kind of play jazz together and they don't have to think about whether Pro Tools is rolling or not. And you know, I think that I learned a lot about just how different people, the methods in which they create, the methods in which they act. There's little tricks, and then there's just hardcore digging deep for like emotions and memories to pull them out for a performance and that kind of stuff. And I've seen different people go about all their different ways of doing these things. Um, so I learned kind of a bird's eye view of like how the process works, and getting to sit in a room and record everybody in town, um from Troy Baker and John DiMaggio, Deborah Wilson, all the way to like some new kid who's like me, like a death metal singer who's trying to do monster voices. And seeing how, like, I've seen bad sessions and I've seen brilliant sessions. I've seen performances that'll make you cry, and to kind of see all of that, and then to be like, okay, well, now it's your turn to go in the booth, and then to go in the booth and realize it's different when you're standing in front of the microphone. You kind of, I was kind of like, yeah, I could do this. Yeah, yeah. And then they're like, okay, go in there, and this is the situation, and this is what you're doing, and do it just with your voice. And it's like, oh, oh, I need to learn how to do this.
Yeah, oh, I gotta learn how to like do the performance. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
the
because yeah.
first time I died, I was in the booth with Stephanie Shea, and she's one of the people that gave me some of my very first trial by fire, like kind of like, okay, you got a good voice, but you're good, not great. Let's get you in here and do some stuff. And I was like, cool. Whatever you want. Like, that's kind of been my attitude the whole time. It's just like, whatever you want, I'll do it. And I think that general attitude really will kind of help anybody who's trying to get into it. Like, it's not about me, it's about the story that someone else is trying to tell. I'm trying to help someone else tell their story. Uh Even if it's a background character who's just going, hey, whatever it is, like you're creating this atmosphere. And she had me die. I was like a random background character who died. And I remember I was like, okay, okay, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die real good. Okay, watch this. And she was like, um, you don't sound like you died. You sound like you just laid down and went to sleep. Like, I need you to die. And I was like, oh crap. I'm
That's a
failing. I'm screwing this up right now.
yeah, that's a very blind feedback. Yeah, but if I need you to die, I want you to actually die.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay?
Do what you just did, but like better,
Yeah, pretty much.
but good. No, but
Yes.
it's but it when you're working on these kind of projects, it's like it needs to be great. If anyone has seen stuff like Your Name, or oh god, one of my personal favorites right now is Bell. those are Stephanie Shea and Michael Claus, and the quality that they put, it's just like incredible stuff. So yeah, if I'm in the booth for them, like I need to sound like I'm really doing the things that I'm really trying to voice, but you
Oh,
learn.
totally. Yeah. Oh,
You
oh
learn.
yeah, of course. And speaking of death, kind of an awkward segue. Aggretsuko. So, yeah, let's talk about death metal. Aggretsuko. So, what goes into the recording, and how did you actually get involved with an anime that is, started to gain like a following? Particularly like because I know that the show is with the themes of adulting and working and stuff, but I know that it's also gained a large fandom with the furry community. I'm not throwing any shade, but I just know that I mean there are a lot of wonderful people like that I know in the fandom. So yeah, tell us about working on Aggretsuko for all of you, for all of those in the audience that are, fans of the show and also fans of your work. I mean, come on. Think that's probably the show that actually introduced that kind of got your name out there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I feel like it is. Every once in a while someone will come through and they'll be like, "Oh, you sang on the Blaze Blue LA vocal edition." I'm
My
like,
God,
"Oh,
yes,
dude, you remember
you
that?"
do
Like,
this, and
yeah.
dude,
I'm like,
yeah.
"You remember. You've been around with me for
Oh
a
my
while." Yeah.
God, yeah.
But it was really a Gretzko. That was the one that really kind of started to get around with people, and then Fire Emblem and Guilty Gear kind of really
Oh
drove it.
yeah.
But this is probably one of the weirdest of my like how I got their weird stories. Cause like I said, I've always been in bands, I've always done that stuff. And one of the things that I always did when I played live, because I wanted to do these, heavy voices. And, I was always this little tiny, skinny little guy, I was a little guy, but I wanted to sound like a really big guy on stage. My band was heavy and I wanted to be like, and I just really always pushed so hard to get like this big voice. And over the years, you do that stuff and it just gets easier and easier if you practice it and do it correctly and healthy and all that stuff. But I was doing that kind of voice for my like kind of Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson-ish industrial music and my metal music. And it was like one of those things where people are kind of like, oh god, I don't like it when you scream, I like it when you sing and it's pretty. And I'm like, no, like this is what I want to do, I scream at people. But years and years later, like I said, I ended up in the VO industry because I was in like commercial music recording studios, and then ended up in the VO studios. So over the time, I met everybody. And one of the people that I met, um, who has been supportive and instrumental to a lot of what I've done, and one of the people that I just generally just love as a person is Patrick Seitz, and I met him. I think on the Basara game. I think I met him for the first time on Basara, and then we ended up working on Blaze Blue together. Because he played the main guy, Ragna, yeah, I want to say Ragnar, but it's not Vikings. He played Ragna, and then I sang Ragna's theme song. So we kind of were like, "Oh, I sang your theme song. Oh, I'm the voice." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know who you are. Like, I love your voice." And he was like, I guess he checked out my music at the time, so he knew what I was doing. I started this metal band, and all the songs were about different anime and video game characters or stories. So this band that I was doing called Modern Weapons, and it's still on Spotify if anybody wants to check it out. But like, it has other voice actors on the soundtrack, or on the album. So like the first song opens with Kyle Abear saying "Heavy Metal Hadouken," and it's got Liam O'Brien on a track. It's got Ruben Langdon on a track. Um, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is cool. Jamison's making metal music for video games." So Patrick was listening to my stuff in the studio when they were working on different things, and when Aggretsuko came around, he was originally going to do the voice, the death metal voice, and it sounded good, but 20-year growly, screamy guy, vet, 20 years of doing that stuff, I was like, he was like, who are we going to get to do this? And then just dawned on him. I think it was Chris, his partner, that was like, yeah, we should call Jamison. I mean, listen, he's doing it right now. He's doing it on the music we're listening to in the studio right now. Let's get him in here and do it. So they called me up, had me come in, and Aggretsuko is Aggretsuko now, I guess. The English version is. Uh and yeah, it's funny because it's like, growing up, in school, people are like, this death metal screaming and video games is never gonna get you anywhere. Well, you know, all of it together
Yeah.
has actually opened a lot of doors.
It's like they definitely opened up like Panda Nastrum and Fire Emblem Heroes, Cavalier and Devil May Cry 5, Final Fantasy 15. So just pretty much a lot of, you know, large gaming franchises that you probably like. It's gonna be really funny when I ask this. So when you actually booked those, did you like you didn't expect in your wildest dreams that you would actually work on such like giant franchises like those and getting the experience to actually work on all of the games and stuff that you've been booking? That probably must have been like, huh, I'm actually doing this. Yeah, so just
Yeah.
share real quickly how it's like getting to work on all of them, like so many amazing projects over the years.
There's this moment where you get an email or a phone call from somebody, and it's like, there's this thing that we need you to help us with, or this job that we want to see if you're interested in, or whatever, or an audition, whatever, and you don't know what it is. And sometimes you don't know what it is until you're actually in the booth or on the job, and then you realize, like, oh crap, like I'm voicing the giant werewolf that I saw in the promo for Resident Evil 8. Like, oh crap, that's what this is. Like, I'm in the room about to record, and I'm just now finding out exactly what this is. It's a pinch myself moment. um my favorite things in the whole world have been, like, Street Fighter, Berserk, and Devil May Cry. Those are like my ultimate favorite franchises, and I've gotten to do something for each of them. And it's a really cool place, because, like, I realize, like, my bucket list is kind of already checked off, and from here on, like, everything else is a bonus. And it becomes more about, like, like I said, the storytelling and the art of what it is that we do. um Whatever it is that we do, whatever chair you're sitting in, whether it's musician, composer, voice actor, uh, and it's like a liberating, like, extremely, full of gratitude to be in that place, to know that I got to help out with some of my favorite things, um, whatever capacity it may be. Um,
Yeah.
it I think one of the moments that really kind of was pivotal in my head to, like, the mentality change was when I was working on Devil May Cry 5. I recorded all of the dialogue from all the actors in that game, took it home, and did all the matching and all the stuff. Um, so I went into that project as an engineer, but then I auditioned for, like, all the boss monsters, got Cavalier Angelo. Actually, I was originally supposed to be one of the three heads of Cerberus originally, and then instead of me being one head, they were like, "We're going to make you this whole guy," and he turns into a motorcycle, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then it was later in the process, they hadn't cast the person to do the style rank announcement voice, and I came to work one day, and Itsuno-san was there with Capcom, and my producers and directors were all there. We're getting ready to record for the day. The voice actors coming in, and they're like, "We want you to do the style rank voice." I'm like, Really? Everybody who plays Devil May Cry 5 is going to have me yelling at them in the face like every time they pull off like a new combo rank. I was like, this is insane. Like, this is like my favorite video game of all time. And you're making me like, you know, like the Killer Instinct guy voice. Like I was like, "Oh my god." Um and it's very humbling, to actually sit down and play the game for the first time, and you're hearing all this stuff happening, and you're a part of the whole thing, you know. And to play a game like that and enjoy it that much, and then to be like, yeah, well, I you get to the point where you're just enjoying the game and you're like, oh, I forgot that's me at some point. And then it pops up and I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, that's me again. But you're kind of like always remembering like the processes and the work that goes into that game, the stunt work done by like Johnny and Ruben and Dan and the whole team, and it's like these really incredible people, and all I did was walk into a room and go badass, like I wasn't doing backflips on cables and stuff, but it's just really cool to be just a part of something that you love that much.
Yeah, right on, man. Is there like anything else that you want to share or talk about at the moment? Like any last bit of advice or just anything to close us out on?
Oh, put me on the spot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Since I started, going down this path, I've questioned myself many times. You can get stuck in your head and let things really get to you. Social media sometimes doesn't help with that, especially when you see other people who are doing a very good job of being very successful at their things. And I see a lot of young people who really look up to voice actors, maybe want to be voice actors or want to be musicians, and they kind of let a lot of this other stuff happen, get them down. And I totally understand it, but I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, in order to move forward, was to really take care of yourself, take yourself very seriously. You are a business. If you look at yourself as a business, you have a much better chance of making things happen for yourself. You'll be ready at any moment if something comes up. If you're ready all the time, you're ready today. And just keep your eyes on your own lane, focus on your craft. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Just be the best you that you can be. And I think that's probably the biggest advice I would give to anybody, regardless of what side of it they want to get into.
Yeah, right on. And I totally agree. So, I think people can find your social media like on your website and everything. And yeah, so if people want to get in contact with you, they can do that. But regardless, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a huge pleasure having you on. And this will go up at some point later. If not today, then definitely this week. So stay tuned. And this is Robert Jackson signing out. Thank you for watching the Station Square podcast. Bye.